One of the key things we need to learn in order to progress with our longboarding is getting out the back. And whilst this might be all well and good for when the waves are 1 foot, if we're looking to improve our surfing, it goes without saying that we need to find bigger and better waves. And so we have to first be able to paddle out past these in order to find ourselves on them. Getting out the back can sometimes be an absolute battle. And on top of that, it can actually be one of the things that really holds back and limits our surfing. We might be looking to improve our surfing, and this might mean surfing new waves, surfing new surf breaks, even looking at developing and progressing with the wave size that we're actually surfing as well. But still, to be able to surf these waves, we've got to be able to get out the back and pass through these waves on the paddle out. And this is actually still one of the biggest reasons and one of the biggest barriers that stops us from progressing. I wanted to make the most comprehensive video on strategies for getting out the back of the liner, all of which can be applicable to you, whether you're the surfer starting their surfing journey to potentially those who are looking to start riding some pretty big surf. Alright, so I definitely think it's one of the most daunting things when we're looking to progress with our surfing and head out in a lineup where the waves are a little bit bigger and thinking, how exactly am I going to even make it out the back? And in this instance, if you're a little bit apprehensive, you're actually exactly right, because we don't actually use the same paddle out strategies when we're in the beginner phases of our surfing versus when we're advancing through to the advanced levels of our surfing where the waves are a bit bigger. There are actually different strategies and techniques. This is stuff that's taken me a little while to figure out, but as I've been developing the types of waves that I've been surfing, as my surfing has progressed, I've learnt different strategies in order to get out the back a little bit more efficiently. So I hope that you can use this as a tool to develop you with your own surfing as you're challenging yourself a little bit more to help you get out the back a little bit more effectively. So as a beginner, we're most likely going to find ourselves initially in the whitewater and having to push through endless bouts of whitewater waves that are coming at us. We may even start just standing next to our boards, so anywhere from our waist to chest deep in the water, and pushing ourselves through waves like this. And then we will also, of course, be progressing through to paddling on our board, which will require some idea of how to get through the waves in this scenario as well. The first one is simply placing the board over the wave, like this. This one is easy enough and is applicable anywhere from ankle to chest deep water. It's important we keep the nose of the board forwards because if it's sideways, it's much trickier to lift the whole board over the wave. And if we don't lift it high enough, it may hit the underside of our board and send us packing. So keep the nose facing forwards, lift it over the wave, and then as you come over the wave, you can hold yourself on the board with your hands until your feet touch back down. The second strategy we'll walk through is the spear. One of the most common mistakes at this stage surfers make is walking out into the water with their board sideways in front of them. The problem here is, if and when the wave hits you, it's going to give you a big thump and you're not going to be able to override the pressure of the water hitting the bottom of the board, and it'll push you further backwards. Worse yet, if the board is flat and sideways when the wave hits you, the board will actually flip, which can be fairly dangerous as well. So similar to like we spoke about before, make sure the nose of the board is directly facing the whitewater, and instead of lifting the board over, we're going to spear it through the whitewater. The last one that we'll cover in the beginner stage will be the press up technique. Now, this one is the first one that requires us to pass through a wave whilst we're on our board. And it's really important to note with this as well that we do have our board facing, as we spoke about with the prior examples, with the nose facing directly towards the whitewater. If we are sideways facing with this one, then the wave will naturally want to flip the board over and send us flying as well. So we want to make sure that the nose is pointed directly towards the whitewater. As we're approaching the whitewater, it helps to have as much speed as possible to counteract the wave's energy against us. So firstly, ensure you have a good paddle speed in the lead up to the wave. Next, we want to place the hands right next to our chest, and I like to grab the rails so we have control if the whitewater does push the board in various directions, so we can keep the board with us and it doesn't slip. From here, just before the wave hits us, we want to press up, rising our chest and coming into a cobra position. For bigger whitewater waves, it can also help to press up from the toes to lift the hips and knees off the board, decreasing the resistance to the wave's energy and all helping to reduce the drag. Things we want to make sure we're avoiding is holding the fin like this, ditching your board, and of course holding your board sideways. But now we're ready to move on to the more intermediate techniques. Alright, so the intermediate techniques are going to be some really good techniques we use to get out in most conditions that we'll be riding a longboard in. They're used by a variety of really good surfers, and their aim is to make sure that we can get out the back as quickly and efficiently as possible. The first one is going to be the Superman. The Superman is a great way to let the wave go underneath the board and catapult you over the top, reducing drag and how much the wave is going to send us in the other direction. We use this with whitewater that may look a bit too big to use the press up technique with, and it's an absolute must if you found it difficult not to get dragged backwards by the sets. Similar to the press up technique, the first thing we'll need to make sure of is that we have adequate speed paddling towards the wave. What we'll then do is, well before the wave gets to us, we're going to sit on the board and slide ourselves towards the tail to lift the nose up. As the nose lifts up into the air, we want to make sure that the nose will clear the entire wave and that the whitewater won't come over the nose. Alright, so here comes the tricky part. As the wave hits the underside of the board, it's going to create a fair bit of lift and want to make you, as well as the board, do a bit of a backflip where it sends the nose towards the beach. To counteract this, we need to shift our weight up the board as we feel the wave hit us and lift us. So follow these steps to do this correctly. Before the wave hits us, make sure you extend your arms and grab the rail near where your head or chest would be. If we keep our hands at the back of the board, we'll definitely get flipped. Then as the wave hits and lifts you, slide yourself forwards, bringing your chest and weight in line with where your hands are. This will have the effect of counterbalancing the flipping motion, like an ollie on a skateboard. Timing is crucial here though. If we are too late in sliding ourselves up the board, then the wave is most likely going to actually push us back towards the beach anyway. So we've got to get the timing right in when we bring ourselves up, but if we do get it right, then we're going to smoothly elevate and go over the whitewater on a wave that otherwise would have most definitely dragged us back a fair way. So happy days. Now, the next one will be our shooting through the wave technique, and this is actually one that we do when the wave is breaking as we're passing through it. Oftentimes, the mistake here is trying to use the press up technique here, but we get a mouthful of water and sent backwards instead. So as the wave is breaking over you, tightly grab the rails near your chest, bring your head down and eyes closed, as streamlined as you could be to pierce through the wave. Once again, a good paddle speed before the wave hits you will always help. Alright, so the next strategy, a technique that we're going to use is the one that's probably the most exclusive to longboards. It can be used with any longboard, which is a massive advantage, and it's called the turtle roll or the Eskimo roll. Now this is where we actually roll ourselves over so that the underside of the board is facing up and we can pass underneath the wave. It's usually good for bigger whitewater waves that we feel like the other strategies that we've previously discussed won't be suitable. So let's get into the tactics of how to actually do this. With some good paddle speed approaching the wave, from here, we want to grab both rails firmly with your hands, pick a side you preference to roll your board over. For me, it's the left, and then as smoothly as possible, roll the board over whilst you're holding on tightly. Alright, so one of the biggest things that I get asked quite often about the turtle roll is where we actually hold the board. So the best thing that we want to make sure we're doing is we're holding around the chest, okay, and we're holding nice and firm with the hands around the rails like this. We do need to make sure that we don't have our chest and our face actually pressed up against the board because the water will be moving around a fair bit and we don't want to get a bump on the head. But I've also seen people who have, in some scenarios, said that they like to extend the arms out all the way so that the board is right above them like this. But for me, this isn't what I prefer to do. We want to make sure, because we're going under a bigger wave, that we're in a really nice, strong position for our arms. The arms are going to be strongest with our elbows tucked by our side and the elbow at about 120 degrees flexion or elbow bend. And so we should have it close to here for us. If it's out here, we're not going to be strong. If it's too close, we don't want that either. But this is where we're going to have a lot of strength and the ability to stop the wave from wobbling the board around too much. We also don't need to have the feet, knees and hips connected to the board, so you can let those hang, as long as we have the tight grip with the elbows flexed, making sure that your face and chest isn't pressed up against the board though. The other key things to remember, of course, is that we want to make the board as streamlined as possible. So make sure that the nose of the board is again facing directly towards the wave, and the other one is people turning too early and wait for the wave to come to them. Try to commit the turn just before the wave gets to you, but of course ensuring that you have completely rotated the board so it's upside down but flat as the wave passes over. Now, for the advanced techniques, of course, we still want to be utilizing all of the prior techniques that we've discussed in this stage, but with a few more things to add on, most notably the duck dive. Now, the advanced techniques really come into play when we are surfing waves that are, significantly bigger. We'd be saying 4 foot plus, especially for unruly beach breaks and when there's a lot of water moving, when there's a fair bit of a sweep and things like that. In the bigger waves, the first thing I'd mention is it's really about firstly understanding our level of surfing and being super responsible with the waves we're heading out in. From there, it's also about utilising our lineup IQ and wave IQ to look for the path of least resistance and be as smart as possible in our approach in getting out the back. Now, I could do a completely entire new video on this in and of itself. There's a lot to cover and it is something I might do into the future. So if it is something that you want to see, maybe just let me know down in the comments below. But it's really about learning the more advanced skills in terms of this lineup and wave IQ. So thinking about timing the sets for our paddle out, exactly when to go out, making sure that we can utilize rips, thinking about the sweep and how this informs our zone where we paddle out from. So all of these things, but we'll get to that another time. Let's delve into how we commence the duck dive. I use this to get under big whitewater waves, where I could also implement the turtle roll, but I find with the duck dive, depending on how deep I can get, I come up with more speed and I don't have to turn back over, and so it's just a more efficient approach. If the whitewater is too big, however, I'd say anywhere from 4 to 5 foot plus, it's most likely that I can't get deep enough underneath the water, and so I'll likely have to turtle roll it. But again, that's something I gauge as the wave is approaching. Firstly, with some good paddle speed and approaching the wave, I actually want to tilt the rail and press firmly on one side first. Now, this is because, unlike the shortboard that I have behind me, there's a lot more width in the deck of the longboard, and so to push this down becomes a lot more tricky. So what you can end up doing is pushing one rail down first. I like to use my left, so pushing the left down first and then equalizing it as you hit the bottom, which we'll walk through. This just is a more efficient, effective way to get the longboard pressed down underneath the water. Again, not so much of a problem with something like this. We don't want the board to stay on its side underneath the water though, so then we'll counterbalance this by pressing down on the other rail whilst keeping pressure on the initial rail. This will actually flatten the board out with the nose under the water. What we'll then want to do is extend one leg out. This is absolutely your choice, but I usually extend my right leg out, and then use your arms to extend your body backwards over the tail so your chest is over your knee. So the biggest mistake that I see people make with the duck dive is they come from this starting position, so they've pressed down into one rail, they've gotten down to the bottom, they've equalized, and then they just try and simply push down with the back knee. But we won't be able to do it in this way. There's not enough pressure on the back knee, and we're not really doing it properly in that way. What we've got to do and make sure that we're doing is we are sliding ourselves back. So we actually push ourselves away, extend our arms to push ourselves away so that our whole body is essentially over the tail. And then again, we're extending that leg out and we have the chest coming over the knee, and then we can push, and we can also push with that tail, pushing the tail down with the foot so that the nose rises and then we come to the top. So again, not pressing down and then just pushing in with the knee. We actually press, slide ourselves back. Then we come and extend out of that, pushing the foot into the tail. And then as we come up, we can continue paddling. Timing is crucial here. If we press up too late, we'll get a face full of whitewater. If we press too early, then our board will resurface too early and we'll get a face full of white water. We want to have the front of the board submerged along with us by the time the water is passing over us, and ideally we're at our deepest point with the nose under the white water as it's actually over our head, so that then we can slide ourselves back and shoot ourselves towards the top shortly after the white water has passed. This will also be the way in which we reduce our drag and therefore limiting the wave's energy, pushing us backwards. Okay, so I hope that's been a helpful one today, guys, and that you can use all of those different little tips and tricks to get yourselves out the back to hopefully, thinking about the end result, get yourselves on better waves, improve your surfing, have more fun, all that fun stuff. So if you do have any questions on the stuff that we covered today, please always feel free to leave that down in the comments below. Always happy to have a bit of a chat, as well as get maybe some new ideas for the future videos. Try to keep these videos as much led by you and what you all kind of want to see as possible. So really appreciate all the feedback, but we will leave it there for today. Catch you on the next one.